You've got the wrong idea, I'm afraid. I enjoy killing. It's far more fun killing people than it is killing beasts.
Oh, how am I going to start this one? I have said in the past that if I get cancelled for any of my videos, it would be for my Spider-Man the Movie Game 2 retrospective, where I clearly and repeatedly state that it's not all that good. But now, oh boy. It's been kind of funny actually, watching videos only loosely related to the show. Maybe not even talking about solo leveling, but just using clips because it's an example of what they were talking about. And seeing comments from solo leveling defenders immediately jumping to, "It's funny how salty you people get because your favourite show didn't win the award." Like, that's their default and only argument. But despite the fact that I will be skinning the show alive, in order to show its great glaring flaws, please pay attention, because you will find better arguments in defense of solo leveling in this video. So the audio in this video will be quite erratic, as I am still trying to figure out how best to use this new microphone, what are the best settings and programs and so on. And I found that when I'm using Ocean Audio and Audacity, which for some reason I always want to call Audible, which is a very different thing altogether, the sound always comes out as muffled, where if I record directly into CapCut, which I use for video editing, it's much sharper and cleaner. I don't know why. But if I do record directly into CapCut, I can't add the vocal effect for 8. Plus it just doesn't feel right. You have more options when you record directly into an audio mixer as opposed to a video software. I mean, CapCut just has less options. Honestly, I've been considering looking at other programs too. But so if the sound quality keeps changing, that's because I'm trying to find the best way to use this new microphone. So first, what's the fuss all about? Well, solo leveling. We're gonna copy and paste the name from now on because it's weirdly annoying to type. Maybe that's a dyslexic thing? Is a Korean manhwa released in 2016 and written by Chugong. It received an anime adaptation in 2024, winning Anime of the Year over Freerun at Journey's End. A lot of people are upset that Freerun lost, and that made me personally curious after I finally got around to watching it, and so I decided to give solo leveling a go. I was vaguely aware of the series before this. My friend's cousin, also my friend, but well, I knew the first guy better, got my friend, the first one, to read solo leveling, and he really got into it. I was mildly curious, but was quickly put off when that first friend, why didn't we just call him our housemate? That would have been so much easier. Our housemate, and then our friend, who also happens to be the housemate's cousin, tried telling me about it. When someone's attempts at convincing you to try something boils down to how cool it is when the main character finally says his catchphrase, well, then you get solo leveling. I lost all interest from that, only getting a little back when I found out that the anime would be scored by Hiroyuki Sawano, an absolute legend in anime soundtracks. But it was only late 2025 that I bothered, thanks purely to the controversy around Freerun, which was super good by the way. If solo leveling beat Freerun, then surely it has something going for it, right? Well, it's pretty bland too. I'll admit, towards the end of season 1, I reconsidered the name for this video, but after like a second of thinking about it, I realised it still fits. I was just taken in by, well, the aura, I suppose. That, and some real gravy soaking into the paper steak. That is the appearance of events happening outside of Sun Jinwoo's solo career. Like, who is this guy? What's his name again? His job? His purpose? If I've been told already, then none of it stuck with me, because he's had no real attention. Sure, let's have a mystery about what happened on Jeju Island 3 years ago. Mysteries are cool and tasty and give you something to dig your teeth into. What? Oh, that original mystery has now been smothered by a new mystery. One that's clearly setting up Jinwoo saving the world. Neat. No, that's a little unfair. It really is good. More mysteries are more meat. It's just, well, Jinwoo is the center again. Not he's forcing his way into the thick of it in the center, but that everything is happening around and to him. So, where do I start this thing? Firstly, as of writing this, I have watched season 2, but most of this script is about season 1. So yes, I know about the Chimera Ants ripoff done a biz. Never mind. I know what's coming, but that won't be getting a script because, well, it doesn't deserve one. It's just not worth it. If I made another video about that, I would just be repeating a lot of what is in here, talking about how brain-numbing the low points are, and how the high points are actually really good from a surface level, right up until Jinwoo starts fighting and now we're bored again. And so it all really just boils down to meh. So, let's start at the beginning, because that was pretty good. The first 3 episodes very nicely set up a different series altogether. Sure, I sigh and roll my eyes at the ridiculous blood, but the way that blood is used in anime is actually worth another video altogether. Like, seriously, I could write a whole video on just blood in anime. The first thing that we see in the series is setting up the core conceit of this new world. Monsters, magic, and ranks. Plus, what's his name over there's mystery revolves around what we see here. We get the beginning, but we don't get the ending, even though something big clearly happened. And that's cool. It's questions like that which keep the viewers coming back. Problem 1. I was getting more excited breaking down the story and everything good and bad about it than I was actually watching it. And this will continue. So, now 3 years later, and we're introduced to Mr. Overused trope in recent years, particularly in Korean and Chinese series, but Japan definitely isn't guilt-free here. And yes, this long-winded name is making fun of another overused trope of excessively long anime names. Mr. Weakest, yet also the strongest. Cool trope. Basic underdog story. Shame that these series are so often boring for the same reasons that we will be covering in a bit. Sung Jinwoo is not only a hunter of the lowest rank, but also the weakest of them. I like to hope that this somehow connects to later events, but, well, let's just say that I've never been great at hoping. Jinwoo shows up immediately after we're introduced to Mr. Obvious Death Flag here, so that we can learn about Jinwoo vicariously. Mr. Death Flag gets a full explanation of just how weak Jinwoo is, while literally everybody present greets him enthusiastically. Clearly, people like him, and even respect his sheer grit, which is actually a cool thing to do in the story. Maybe he'll later come into his own and will be supported by... Oh. No, the title is Solo Leveling. Remember this, We'll come back to it later. The one single person here who isn't happy that Jinwoo is present at this dungeon raid obviously wants to push him down behind some of this construction equipment.
Up to ours.
And is just worried about his safety. She isn't unhappy to see him, just worried for him. I don't remember her name, but that's fine because she has no purpose in this story except as a talkative health potion pre-Jinwoo God mode. I actually thought that she would be getting fridged, but no, she doesn't even get that. Should I talk about Jinwoo's character yet? I mean, he only really has a character for these first 3 to 4 episodes. No, I guess I'll do that once the changes happen. But for now, I will skip to the best bit, the locked room. This is actually cool. The party of 15 hunters are locked inside of a large room, ringed with statues that they cannot possibly fight. The statues don't attack unless a certain trigger is met, i.e., trying to open the door, upon which they will kill you. This one huge statue is clearly the boss, and I just realised this section may not actually help my case. Let's just say that it helps to establish a few things about Jinwoo. He's determined, observant and quick-witted, skills that have been honed by struggling to survive in dungeons that other people can just breeze through. This is cool, and will surely be key to later events. No, it fucking isn't. It's not. None of this matters later. We're watching a completely different character in a completely different series being built up here. I want to watch that anime. It seems like it could be great. I did enjoy the puzzles here and found them to be something I could mostly figure out for myself, which kind of helps put us in Jinwoo's head a little. Except, well, the second puzzle seemed a little obscure given the information they provided. Although, when we rewatched it, they did make a point of mentioning the instruments, so it's plausible that a viewer could have gotten it. But we aren't actually sure if we got the correct answer for the third puzzle. What we guessed is what happened in the show, and that makes the most sense. But Jinwoo came up with a different solution? One that was never confirmed nor denied to be correct. And we mean, they used the word sacrifice or faith, not patience. So, end of episode 2 and start of episode 3, Jinwoo dies alone and wakes up in hospital. Ooh, mystery. What is this system? Why did it choose Jinwoo of all people? What is its purpose, or what is its goal? Nice questions. Good questions. I'ma ignore some stuff here, because this isn't a series overview, and I want to get to the core of this video. The system gives Jinwoo a lot. Daily quests with a punishment for failing. Kinda neat, but can you imagine having to do that every day for the rest of your life? Yeesh. Rewards for accomplishing this quest, and is the full recovery an item? It doesn't seem to be. A spell? Maybe something more like a D&D cantrip? Whatever. Welcome to Jinwoo's first utterly broken ability.
Full recovery activate.
Full recovery. Presumably it has a limit, but we never get to see a counter or a cooldown, so the series will just build tension by letting Jinwoo get torn apart before he pops one of these and sets the tension back to 0 for the rest of the series. Great. It might be worth mentioning here that the punishment for failing his daily quest is to be teleported to a desert where he has to survive against monsters for 3 hours. Remember that. Anyway, Jinwoo can also get a logic-defying daily reward of a random loot box. Like, I can accept dungeons, magic, and monsters being a bizarre physical phenomenon, but random loot boxes? Bear in mind, I'm not actually complaining about this. It's just one more drop of mystery gravy to keep me hungry, and I am here for it. I'm adding this in post, but there's a bit of an ongoing... No, you can't really call it an ongoing joke, but it's set up as though it's meant to be an ongoing joke, where he gets random shit like pencils or used bingo cards from these drop boxes, but it's almost never used, to the point that when he got said used bingo card, I didn't have the context, or I suppose memory, to put it together, and I was just like, what's going on? It was only later that I realised it was a reward. And it feels like that could have been such a great ongoing comedy bit that we're not getting from the series. Now, the drop this time is a key to an instance dungeon, and is where the solo leveling comes into play. Inside of this dungeon, Jinwoo kills a handful of supposedly strong mobs compared to his current level. But he doesn't really seem to struggle. I mean, it does take a bit of time for him to get used to his newfound strength, but that's about all of the struggle we get. This levels him up, and and it heals him fully. Jinwoo doesn't need to rest in order to level up. It doesn't even need to confirm on a text box. It just happens and fully heals him. Overpowered ability number 2. You know what? Editor Vivian's going to step in here. This is overpowered because of how often and how easily Jinwoo levels up. The flaw isn't necessarily that he heals when he levels up, it's the fact he levels up like 2-3 times every fight, mid-fight sometimes, so it's just too overpowered. So let's talk about something important. Enemy levels and the colour of their names. Jinwoo can see the names of whatever species he's facing in a text box floating above its head, and the colour of that name tells him how strong the enemy is. So cool, right? This provides opportunities for tactical maneuvering, pitting enemies against each other, setting up traps. Leveling up on weak enemies while avoiding danger? No, it means absolutely nothing. The show makes a point of walking us through this mechanic. White equals weaker than Jinwoo, orange means equal to his level, and red is a higher level. Based on this, you would assume the goblins and wolves he faced earlier, with little difficulty, before fighting an entire horde of wolves and leveling up repeatedly, were white. Nope. Orange goblins and red wolves. Admittedly, it was a pretty intense moment, seeing all those names popping up in red from the darkness. That was pretty cool. This tells us that this mechanic with the colours is pointless, literally meaningless. Oh, and after slaughtering an entire horde of higher level wolves, Jinwoo gets a title that provides a 40% damage boost to all animal type enemies. By the time Jinwoo reaches the dungeon boss, he's gone from level 2 to fucking level 15. Holy shit, that's so much. His HP has gone from 200-ish to over 1,000, and his strength has gone from 32 to 45. All I can say is that at least he isn't getting attribute points on top of all of these levels. The dungeon boss is an enormous snake. We love snakes. Jinwoo actually gets his ass handed to him here, which is cool. Then he has a flashback about... Actually, I'm not sure what the point is. Jinwoo mentions being a laughingstock, which we've not only never seen, but have actually been shown the opposite. Even when Mr. Deathflag was having Jinwoo's situation explained to him, there was no laughter, there was no mockery. And that, yes, he used to be the weakest hunter. Jinwoo goes on a rant about how the weak always lose. We haven't seen that. The weak get looked down upon despite having other skills. We also haven't seen this. And how his kindness never saved him. But we've not seen it work against him either. In fact, he somehow wooed a B-rank healer lady, presumably by being kind. And let's be honest, by being adorable. And then we get this dramatic, fantastically animated scene that is totally unearned in its emotional intensity. Not only is it all telling instead of showing, but much of it is going against what we have been shown. Then Jinwoo levels up like 3 times, because of course he does. Levels mean nothing. Even this early into the series. Heck, clearly levels mean less than his own willpower, so take that how you will.
shimmy past this fence to get to the next town in the area. And the main path on the road after the first dungeon just leads you into a level 20 boss that you absolutely can't fight yet. The leveling system is also kind of like a mobile game. You kill one enemy and you level up. You kill a boss and you get like 10 levels. Also, game, I think...
What? Are you telling me that all of this time, the reason he levels up like a fucking lunatic is because it's based on mobile game logic? I mean, I don't play mobile games. After watching the series, I was like, let's try something akin to that, and I ended up downloading Wuthering Waves, which was not to my tastes. But that didn't seem to match up to Solo Leveling, so I was like, fine, I'll ignore it. But are you telling me this is why Jinwoo levels up like a lunatic? Because it's based on mobile game logic? That's... God, that's even more disappointing. But I suppose it makes more sense than a more traditional RPG. Like in a more traditional RPG, sometimes you have to grind to get levels. You may go ages without even getting a level up, depending on how difficult the game is. I mean, if you've ever played D&D, you know that leveling isn't necessarily a common thing. There's a reason the level cap is often like 20. Oh man, this makes a lot more sense, and I'm a little disappointed. He also gets a new weapon that's twice as strong as his previous sword and has 2 debuff effects. 2 powerful debuff effects. Then there's the potion that's actually pretty cool. It's a poison that will raise his defense at the cost of his strength. Nice. It's useful, but also not an easy decision to make. So Jinwoo puts it in his back pocket for now. Leaving the dungeon, we get a scene that shows us how stupid strong Jinwoo has gotten over, 2-3 hours max? With a D-rank hunter practically shitting himself at Jinwoo's show of power. Like, God, just jerk him off already. Get it over with so we don't have to watch. And speaking of jerking off, today's sponsor is... Joking. But at the start of episode 5, literally every lady nurse, because all nurses are women, everybody knows that, wants to jerk Jinwoo bad. And like, yeah, Jinwoo's kind of cute, but don't you think that's a bit much? Who the fuck is this tall-ass Kirito-looking asshole? Oh, that's Jinwoo now. So long, cute, emotive Jinwoo. Hello, blank, boringly handsome, blank canvas. Guess it's time to talk about the non-character that is Son Jinwoo. Up until now, Jinwoo has been fine. A little bland, maybe, but in a way that suits him and allows for future development. Jinwoo was shy, but determined. He was clearly likable, and was an all-round decent character for the start of a series. I did begin to see him as a bit self-pitying with a victim mentality, thanks to the snake fight, acting all, woe is me.
That piece of crap E-rank's as weak as he is mopey.
Which could have been fine, fun even, if that had been the intent. Instead, this was the result of the telling conflicting with what we've been shown. But now, after his power-up has provided a growth spurt, at 24 years old, but, well, whatever, and some plastic surgery, Jinwoo's face is definitely longer now, and more traditionally anime handsome, aka completely boring. It's also killed his personality, left it in a dark alley somewhere.
Okay, so have you been working out?
Jinwoo does admittedly keep some of his awkwardness, although that seems to come from the fact that he hasn't become aware of his new physical attractiveness and is keeping a mostly polite wall between himself and strangers. When he's on his own, solo, you could say, Jinwoo is pretty bland. And if he's with new acquaintances, then he's still pretty much going solo, bar a few polite, I don't know how to respond, so I'll just smile politely moments. The best of what we get is when he's interacting with people he's comfortable with, such as Miss Healing Item or Mr. Song the Swordsman, and later Jinho. In my notes, I compared Jinwoo to Ichigo Kurosaki. Cool and collected most of the time, but other people are needed to drag his true self out. Rukia, Tatsuki, Ishin, not Orihime though, which is why we believe they were a bad pairing, and we will forever be bitter they didn't get with Tatsuki, who was always able to meet him at his level. Oh, and for you weebs out there, this isn't about power scaling, it's about how people interact with each other. But we understand that that's not something you are very familiar with. Unfortunately, if this is what's happening with Jinwoo, then he really is as boring as he seems. Do I like any characters in Solo Leveling? Yeah, I do. I like Mr. Song, the swordsman, although that could be more because I like his archetype. I do like Jinho, who has more of a main character vibe to him, what's with his cheerful demeanor that he can't show around his family, and his strong drive and motivations. And yeah, I think Igris has more personality than Jinwoo. Just look at this cocky bastard. And I might have been a little too shamefully too excited to have him join the party. Finally, I think I like Charade due to her quiet personality, possible imposter syndrome, and honest badassery. There's that one bowl-cut lady, named Female Investigator 6A in the subtitles, who shows up from time to time. And then there's the head hunter honcho, Chairman Go, I think. But that might also be his archetype that I like. Okay, so I do like the skullduggery that we get in episode 5. Jinwoo can tell that something is off with the group that he's joined, and it's important that we are told this, because we don't have the context to figure it out for ourselves. I'm not convinced that any of this makes sense, and I still don't understand why it was so important that this group didn't have a dedicated healer. Surely they could pull the same trick even with a healer. I mean, a healer can't bring someone back from the dead, so it's not like having one makes any deaths suspicious. But it's cool that Chugong was adding gravy, even if gravy will never manage to make up a whole steak. Episode 6. Oh, a fatigue meat. How long have you had that, Jinwoo? How long have you had a super speed skill, Jinwoo? Oh no, Jinwoo's going to die. Whatever are you going to? Full recovery. So that fatigue thing was... what? Meaningless, that's what. No cunning involved here. No clever thinking. No skill outside of a system raining skills and its favourite boy toy. Just a boring ass fake out that is obviously deliberately designed to remove tension from the rest of the series, right? We normally watch in sub. You can't identify bad voice acting if you don't know the language, right? But while we were getting footage, we did look at the dub, and Jinwoo might actually have some personality here. There is also a pacing issue here. The events of this episode keep getting interrupted by events happening outside. This is terrible. 1, these should have happened before things got tense or afterwards. 2, some of these interruptions serve little to no purpose in the first place and could be dropped entirely. Do we need to watch 3 people we've never met, we think, have a tea party and talk about 1, an unrelated situation, 2, the very situation that this scene is interrupting and we don't need to be told about? We could have had this scene before or after these events, so that we could retain the tension of events happening around our main character. Oh, poor Jinwoo, buried in rocks and self-pity. But yet again, the dub here is actually cool.
How could I have forgotten? It's survival of the fittest in this world. This world filled with violence, deception, and betrayal. How could I?
Oh yes, that's right. Jinwoo got numb to the cruelty, the lies, and so on, while he was being greeted warmly by people who like and respect him. Yes, we know Jinwoo. Life is hard.
The system expects me to murder my
See,
enemies.
Jinwoo and his new friend Jinho joined a party looking for temp members to just carry luggage for this team. It's for a set payment, and they won't have to fight, and so they won't get any rewards from a dungeon, but that seems fair. Jinwoo does note that it's odd that they are being paid so much, and that the team doesn't have a healer. So what? He ponders why they don't have a pool of stand-in hunters that they already trust, instead of hiring strangers. Well, the whole thing is, Jinwoo and Jinho are acting as bait of a sort. They aren't meant to come back out. As I see it, this team believes that they'll need to buy time in order to grab all of the valuables in this dungeon. So they put a couple of nobodies in, who they will trick into getting eaten by the dungeon boss, putting it into a food coma while they scavenge the area. Okay, sure, that seems like a reliable plan. So they abandon our weak boys in the boss room, close off their only escape, and wait. Naturally, Jinwoo destroys the boss, exposing himself his power to Jinho. He levels up 3 fucking times, fully restoring his HP, fatigue, and mana, and then the bad guys return. Surprised that the boss is dead, they decide that D-rank Jinho must have some amazing armor, and as the dungeon's going to close before they can loot the place, they'll just have to settle for selling his armor instead. They try to threaten him into killing Jinwoo first, but Jinho is hero material and refuses, so this one guy headshots Jinwoo, sending him crashing into the wall. So, at the beginning of episode 5, Jinwoo got a call from his landlord, and we all know how this goes. It's the same in every piece of media ever. Where's my money? I don't care if you've been in the hospital. I don't care about your comatose mother and absentee father. If I don't get my money, you'll be on the street and your sister will be selling... Wait, that's not how it went?
Right? Still waiting on this month's payment. But I can push it back if money's tight.
No need. I'll send it right away.
I was genuinely confused when this happened, because they passed up on a perfect moment to add tension to the series, to push Jinwoo into a corner, to show us the oppression and the cruelty that Jinwoo keeps complaining about. But no, the landlord is actually a sound guy, willing to give them more time to pay the rent. But Jinwoo, he doesn't act like that. He's anxious about paying on time, sounding scared, and even unconsciously straightening his posture as though being told off by some military dude. Sung Jinwoo has a victim complex, and it's an undeserved one. And if it were intentional, then I think that could be great. It could be a fantastic direction to explore for the character and the series. But no, I don't think it was intentional at all. Do you remember what I said earlier about interrupting a tense scene with something unrelated? Do you think that I should have spoken about the landlord before starting on the tense scene? Yeah? Right? So, Jinwoo stands up, still rambling about how the weak always lose, even though the strong landlord was giving his weak tenant a whole lot of unnecessary mercy. Now, as undeserved as the attempted emotional weight is here, holy shit, is this scene good? I can set aside the dissonance of telling versus showing in order to enjoy the following scene for what it is. The animation, the choreography, the fucking music. This song, Dark Aria, has practically been on repeat on our Spotify since we finished the series. It's so good. Ooh, I haven't felt this way in a while. And even on a rewatch, even with the dub, this scene is... Whew. So once all this is over, Jinho throws up, which is really good for humanizing him. The fact that Jinwoo barely reacts to his first human kills is dehumanizing. I have a memory that has stuck with me for God knows how long, despite pretty much none of the details remaining. Was it a manga? I don't know. An anime? I don't know. A book? I don't know. The series? I don't know. All I do remember is that the main character kills a human for the very first time and quickly hurries to a public bathroom to throw up. It was such a powerful moment to me that it has stuck around, even as the context and the details fade. In contrast, Jinwoo maybe mopes a bit, but I'm not super sure about that because his bland face is too hard to fucking read. Oh, and he powers up again. A full recovery, cantrip to replace the one that he used, 10 ability points, and a new skill, Murderous Intent. I'll let this new skill slide though, because it's the equivalent to pretty much any shonen hero giving their regulation death stare to the enemy, causing them to flinch. I fucking love that trope, so I'll let Jinwoo have this one, even if it is insanely powerful. Cut enemy abilities by 50% for a whole minute. Holy shit! I just want to add one more thing here. What happens in a dungeon stays in the dungeon.
What happens in a dungeon stays in a dungeon.
It's
Your
basically a
words, not
mantra for
mine.
the rest of the series, so I have to ask. Fucking why? Maybe tech acts dodgy as fucking dungeons. But if they can't give hunters body cams to hand in at the end of every dungeon because they just don't work in dungeons, this is all just speculation. We don't believe that technology in dungeons has ever been addressed. Then why isn't there something in place? Maybe you can't justify having B rank, A rank, or S rank inspectors for every mission for every team. But just regular random inspections would reduce crimes within dungeons, and it would make easier to identify problem groups if things just coincidentally went well every time they were being watched. There are many, many options to sort out bad actors in a situation like this, and it's like they haven't done anything. The options are there, and it's foolish not to have anything implemented as they clearly know shit is happening. I mean, if anything, the one thing that tea party we had to watch, if anything, that told us that this is common knowledge and not just this one-off team who does bad things. It's a known phenomenon. And I'm not just nitpicking here. This is basic world building. If this hasn't been thought of by the author, it hasn't been thought of by the characters, and it's extremely incompetent. That is for the Hunters Agency, who will have people working to set things like this up. I'm not calling Chugung incompetent for missing something that, in my mind, is pretty obvious, but for the agency, and the author should be thinking about this, they should have considered something like this already. They should have something in place. So I'm going to speed through the rest of this season, because I honestly started to get engaged from here. The show starts focusing... No, that's not quite right. The show starts introducing 4 subplots from here. The main plot is, of course, Jinwoo becoming a god. There's Jinho's guild plan. There's the elixir of life for Jinwoo's mom. The upcoming raid on Jeju Island from back in the very first episode, and that S-rank dude plotting revenge against Jinwoo and Jinho. Boy, we sure hope that concludes in an interesting and satisfying manner. And these are genuinely interesting. The guild and the elixir directly affect Jinwoo right now. They are both a need to and a method of getting stronger. And thanks to his own, well, not plans so much as determination to self-isolate, they will eventually get in each other's way. The S-rank subplot provides a looming threat. It's still distant, and as far as Jinwoo can be sure, it might be overblown entirely. But it does cast a shadow over every episode until he shows up. Boy, we sure hope the show gives us a release of this tension in a satisfying way. And yes, 8 is being pissy because we have watched season 2 by the time of this edit. 8, stop being a cretin. That's why you made me, you pillock. And finally, that raid that has nothing to do with Jinwoo, but that is a good secondary plot to keep us interested and involved with the outside world. Which is especially important in a show called Solo Leveling. I want to say that not only is this great, but it's kind of a personal weakness in my own writing. I get too focused on the one character and their story, and the main plot. So this right here is actually educational for me. It helps shift my mindset into creating subplots and different characters' point of views, which is actually one of my favourite parts of reading pretty much anything written by Brandon Sanderson. Like, switching to a new character's point of view, being really disappointed because I was so engaged in the previous characters. But when we switch back to that character, I'm disappointed again because I'm so invested in each individual character that leaving them and returning to the other one, it kind of sucks. And I can't do that. Yet, it's something to work on. And the fact that Solo Leveling is successfully, more or less, giving us not only subplots, but stories from different characters' perspectives. About 2, not including Jinwoo at the moment. It's great. It's really good. And it's educational for me. Part of me wants to go into detail on the Cerberus fight. About how getting his arm bitten off means very little when you're just waiting for him to say, not activate, not pull out and use, but say, full recovery. Full recovery! The animation and choreography do help to raise some degree of tension, but it's so obviously shallow because of that goddamn cantrip. That was easily the worst design decision Chugong made. Ideally, full recovery would have been like a very basic heal spell. Yes, he can activate it at a word, but it only heals like 500 HP maybe? Maybe it does also heal, you know what, no, I was going to say maybe it does also recover lost limbs as an extra bonus to keep it useful. But no, make recovering from major injuries an ordeal. And that would raise the tension so much, because at this point, Jinwoo must have over 2,000, maybe over 3,000 HP at the moment. So if his only reliable cantrip was a 500 HP heal, it'd be useful to a degree, but it wouldn't be nearly enough to lower the stakes entirely. It is cool to see that snake venom item come into play, but the fact that he only manifested that detox skill just in time to make it useful without having to suffer its side effects is convenient. Why couldn't that have been something he had to unlock in a skill tree? And maybe he... how do I say this? We see it a few times before. So it's not, oh, I get this just in time to make it useful. It's, I've had this for like a couple of episodes now. Maybe after fighting the snake, he was like, I need a skill that protects me. Not the snake. Well, the snake too, but I meant the spider from the dungeon he did with Jinho. If he'd done that, and then realised he needed a ability that protected him from poison, and even if it's in the very next episode, there's a nice continuous line of events which lead to him, oh, I can use this, and it might just save my life. Oh, and he levels up like 5 more times. Again. I really liked getting to see the survivors of the double dungeon still struggling with what happened there, with the guilt and the trauma. We really needed to see that show of humanity to keep the show grounded. I do wish it wouldn't telegraph who's going to die so strongly, but whatever. And speaking of humanity, it's from here on out, particularly while interacting with Jinho in the dungeon montage, that we finally get to see some personality from Jinwoo. This is a huge part of why I started to enjoy this series from here. Not the fights, but the interactions, the comedy, and the light-hearted moments. Mostly from, or at least in the proximity of, Jinho. That then gives the heavy, dramatic scenes some extra punch. I am a little torn on the White Tiger Guild Scout. It was really cool, and we got to see Jinwoo's intelligence and cunning in action, so it's neat to see him facing a threat that isn't physical and that he can't full recover or level up his way out of. The problem is, we see it all from the outside. Think about Death Note, Hunter x Hunter, or Zetsu no Tempest. We think. It's been a while since we read that one. We get to hear what our heroes are thinking, their concerns, their strategies, etc. That allows us to follow their struggle from the inside, alongside them, when we are usually privy to their fears. If we don't get that, then it's supposed to be for a reason. We get to see them being cool and trying to pick out what they're planning, something someone will likely explain later. This isn't done often by our heroes, but it does happen, usually after following the hero from the inside, just long enough to give us hints. But here, unfortunately, it's just more, look how cool and awesome and attractive the character I wrote is. It is still a cool moment though. Oh, we think Code Geass is one of these series too, but we probably watched that even before Zetsu and No Tempest, so we can't be sure. Finally, a note on the animation side of things. Oh, that dream sequence. So good. Alright, let's close this off quickly. Jinwoo powers up too much at the end of his class change dungeon. Except, I might be able to accept this one. First though, we didn't need Jinwoo's mopey, woe is me, past self to remind us of how much better he used to look from a character design perspective. As a character, not necessarily a person. Given that Vivian was throwing shade, maybe we're being too pedantic, but we're also kind of bored of conventionally attractive anime characters. Maybe that's the asexual inside of us, but we just bored of it now. We want some characters with visual personality. With that out of the way, let's get positive. I just might be in love with Igris the Blood Red. For a blank, non-character, this stylish bitch has personality for days. Honourable, yet cocky. I hate using this word due to oversaturation, stripping it of meaning or value. But the sass this guy has is incredibly endearing. I will admit I did get a little confused with the final survival challenge. It was set up and stated to be an endurance run without end. Presumably, Jinwoo would use a teleportation stone once ready to give up. But it does come to an end? Oh well. What does happen is actually cool enough for me to let a lot slide. Before entering the dungeon, Jinwoo realizes that he hasn't done his daily quests yet, and he'll just do them afterwards, that's no problem. Only, he doesn't get time to do them later, and so the punishment game pops up just in time to save his ass. And like, seriously, he's about to die, because he lost his teleportation stone again. When the punishment game warps him to another location, giving him an opportunity to recover, and because he has to stay there for 3 hours, he times out the endurance challenge, earning him maximum points. That's actually a really clever use of established mechanics, if also totally broken. It was a Chekhov's gun that was disguised as something else entirely. In the Forced Necromancer class / Shadow Monarch? That's intriguing. I mean, like, seriously, we knew that something was up with the system, whatever the damn thing is. But now it's so obviously heavy-handedly guiding Jinru down a certain path. And a necromancer path, no less? This is good storytelling. It fits in with everything we know about it so far, and adds more mysterious tidbits without being excessively heavy-handed with it. Sure, Jinru comments on this too, so it's not exactly subtle, but it also doesn't need to be subtle, because Jinru deciding to go along with this actually adds a little to him as a character. This makes me want to keep watching. And now to conclude. I put Solo Leveling in the same column as Dragon Ball Super. Not in terms of quality, god no. Solo Leveling is consistently better overall than Dragon Ball Super, which was, frankly speaking, a mess. At the beginning, animation was crap, and at the later, there was the power level consistency was... I was watching it for a bit of dumb, thoughtless fun, but I could not let go of how inconsistent the power scaling was. And I'm not a power scaler. But they are both kind of shallow, dorky series that I can watch without much thought. An old friend would call them bubblegum series, because they're nice, but provide no nutrition. In fact, both series are best watched thoughtless, as their problems can get distracting. Oi! Dragon Ball Super! An enemy that can stand up against Goku's latest Super Saiyan form? A fucking god form? Should not also be equal to Goku's base form. That's... But one thing that people like to ignore in favour of being hateful, negative people, because that gets clicks and shallow engagement, is that Solo Leveling is fun. Beautiful animation and choreography. Those POV shots. Holy shit. Perfectly good music. Not Hiroyuki Sawano's best, but still solid quality. In fact, we've found it's quite good for listening to in the background. It's not good enough to be distracting, but it's also satisfying just to have on as you go about your business. And towards the end of the season, we might be getting some actual meat to go with all of this gravy. Solo Leveling has me. I'm going to keep up with it. Am I a fan? Ask me again after season 2. No, we're not a fan. But we're still going to keep watching because the mystery around the system does have us hooked. Generally, the show is failing to make the most of its hooks. And while the pre-fight tension of they don't know what they're in for is fun, we tend to get bored once the fight actually starts, unless the choreography is particularly interesting. That final fight against Discount Meruem? Easily the most boring fight in the series. But we'll admit that just kind of boils down to not being to our tastes. And yeah, I can't resist. Okay, here. To double check everything I've said here, I decided to rewatch the series. Both seasons, and I just couldn't shake my feelings on that ending. So, here's what I would change. And I'm talking about the Chimera Ant ripoff here. 1, I would have every S-rank be at a similar power level, with the main decisive factor in any S-rank v S-rank fight being type matchups, unique skills, and experience. Having such a huge gap in between S-ranks it's silly. At a certain point, shouldn't they be like, okay, this guy's so much stronger, we're gonna have to call him SS rank instead? Because specifically Goto, the Japanese S rank, he's too powerful, and so is Jinru. And so calling them all S ranks, it's... My feelings on this are complicated, but what I'm trying to say is, for the utmost limit to have such a huge gap is inevitably going to leave Jinru on his own. And I'm assuming he's going to be fighting S ranks from the American and Chinese hunters, because they've been shown to be obscenely powerful compared to the Korean S ranks. But now, because the ranks are set, none of the Korean S ranks, except maybe Charade, they're not going to be able to be involved in any further fights because the gap's too large. So by keeping them at a similar power level but with certain advantages and disadvantages, you keep them involved and keep things exciting. It's no longer just stronger punch wins. 2. The King wouldn't have quite so overwhelmingly dominated the Korean S ranks. That shit is always dumb and boring to me, and ups the power levels so much that they not only become uninteresting, but the characters left behind lose all relevancy afterwards, as I was just saying. Bear in mind, this does not count in comedy series, or series that allow the side characters their own ordeals and victories. One Punch Man is always the go-to example for this, because, well, Saitama is just absurdly powerful. Most of the stories follow side characters like Genos or Moomin Rider. And while Saitama does tend to come in at the end to save the day, we get the emotional gripping from the side characters. So that makes up for the fact we've got an OP character who should be leaving everyone else behind. That one Japanese S-rank, Goto, I would have had not only put up a real fight against the king, but would possibly injure him too, if only in a small way. 3. Jinwoo would not have walked all over this absurdly boring OP enemy like he did. It would have been a relatively even fight. In fact, putting Jinwoo at a slight disadvantage in power would have forced him to use his superior experience, items and weapons and skills in order to even the fight. We've seen Jinwoo use tactics before, and those are easily the best fight scenes. Meanwhile, the king has been alive for what? 3 days? So his experience would be lacking. And 4, finally, Charade would not have been the one to be just obliterated, but instead, the big guy. Insert name here. Baek Yun-hoo. He actually has an emotional connection to whatever Min, the S-rank healer, which would have made his spirit calling out to Jinwoo to resurrect him so that he could save the big guy, Baek Yun-hoo, so that he could save his friend, so much more impactful. Plus, in the final scenes of the season, Cha-Hain is in total awe of Jinwoo and wants to become stronger like him. But realistically, at best, all she saw was a recording that, and let's be honest here, would have been at like 120 frames per second max, so she would not have been able to catch any of that super speed fight. But if she had been conscious watching Jinwoo fight, then it would just work better. In all honesty, it feels like Cha-Hain only got taken out because she was the only woman in the team. And maybe because she's a love interest for Jinwoo, and on a very shallow level that sort of raises the emotional stakes, but none of that's actually been established or set up really yet, so it doesn't work. We're gathering images of the manhwa for the thumbnail, and this looks better. Oh god, did the anime ruin the manhwa? Do we need to make a second video? As this isn't a retrospective, I wasn't planning on including this section. But as I so often say, the less I like something, the more that it inspires me. And yeah, I think it also has to have something that catches my interest. Something to start, some stepping stone to start off from. In the case of solo leveling, I have kind of two ideas for something that I just can't help myself but name. I don't want to level alone. Two ideas, similar in concept, but diverging in the details. Editor's note, I keep forgetting to bring this up, but I mean to in almost every video. These ideas are probably not going to get worked on, so help yourselves to them. These ideas are totally up for grabs. If you can think of something to write from any of these ideas, do it. I would be super happy to know I was inspiring people. All I ask is that you get in contact, send it to me, or a link, or maybe ask for more details. I don't care. Just, it'd be really fun to know that I was putting out writing prompts that people were running with. All right. That was clumsy. What I'm trying to say is that I want to be involved. If you do take from any of these ideas, I would like to be involved in some way. Even if it's just, hey, Vivian, I'm doing this based on your idea. Maybe you can give it a read or a shout out or something. Just because it would be nice. The first idea is probably the most fleshed out in my mind, being the first that I dabbled with, and in a sense, the most down to earth, which is usually my favourite type of fantasy. Sure, pop-ups, flight, and infinite potential is fun, but I really do prefer my magic to be more grounded. Something that seems reasonable should our own world be just slightly different. One day we'll get our thoughts together to explain this properly. Probably using Brandon Sanderson's Mistborn and Stormlight Archive series as a basis. This first one is possibly the most fun as well, in some areas at least. The would-be protagonist became quite gloomy to match our mental state at the time. So, idea one. How do we give our heroes all of this enormous power? Some are born with it, some gain it by accident, and others are destined for it. In the case of solo leveling, some event happened and influences people apparently by chance, and eventually choosing Jinru for unknown reasons. Maybe he's such a bland character that the system thought he'd be easily influenced. I'm not all that good with origin stories. The ones I write tend to be functional, but are never as fun as I want them to be. But I do kind of like this one. Picture this. You're on your way home, but you don't really want to go home yet. In this case, maybe you are living with your widowed mom, who in this case, just because it popped into my head, is actually your stepmom, after your dad died like a month after the wedding. She accepted you instead of leaving you in the foster system, but she was never that good at being a parent. Still, you appreciate the fact that she took you in at all, but she's getting stifling. So when you find a QR code painted on a wall, offering something obscure, like, let's just say power for now, you assume it's an advertising thing for maybe a mobile game or even an energy drink. So you scan it, because you don't want to go home yet. This opens an application that leads you on a multi-hour long QR hunt that's kind of fun. You gotta figure out clues and such, like lining up various patterns to make the next QR code. And it keeps you busy up until the final one leads you to a basket tied to a tree containing one single key with a QR code. Scanning this one, you get a congratulations! You've completed the hunt. We will update you soon for the next step. The very next day, you get a message. I keep using the word next. Ugh. The next task is to meet up with others at this location, and you have to bring that key. Oh, strangers, that's not what you signed up for, but let's give it a go anyway. When you arrive, there are less than 10 people waiting already. But you must be the last because when you arrive, you all get the same notification. There is a table with a row of small statuettes, no more than a foot tall, of what seems to be a tree base growing into two figures attached at the waist, one male and one female. They don't have heads. Is there relevance to this design? Nope, we just thought it was a cool visual that we might be able to add meaning to later. The curtains will blew my hairy ass. Actually, our thoughts on this, for and against, are currently being put into a script. Each statue has a keyhole. It doesn't matter which one you choose, just use the key at the same time as each other. Some of the others grumble, embarrassed at taking this so seriously, while others are eager. One girl you meet is nervous at being around strangers, but is friendly to you. You admire the statue, but the others bark at you to hurry up. The key turns. You are in a cold, dank corridor. The uncrafted stone walls curve into the ceiling. There is a dirty, half-rotten wooden rack of rusty weapons. The others are absent. You hear moans and grunts from further down. You feel a strange separation, as though you are not actually here in this cold cave. Taking a sword and a shield isn't silly. You are in a cave. This can't be real. Sword and shield, like the Romans. Shield in front, stab around the side. It's safe. I'm not going to cover the whole thing in second-person perspective. This isn't a choose-your-own-adventure story. But what are the key points? Your phone tells you to reach the end of a dungeon in order to receive power. As you traverse the caverns, you find creatures that aren't quite right. Like little goblin-looking things, but have white feathers in the place of hair. You meet that nice girl from earlier who is now terrified, but still eager. Maybe that talk of power was real. But she dies. Her throat ripped out by a wolf-like creature, while you try to keep your shield between yourself and another monster. She's not the only one who dies, but you manage to meet other survivors, and after God knows how long, you meet soldiers who are shocked to find you all. They entered through a strange portal and know how to get out. But that girl died. Other people died. Something within you is angry. You can't just accept this. You can't just run. Someone has to finish this to make their deaths mean something? No. Make their deaths not be in total vain. So you run away, and the soldiers follow. They just want to protect you, but the dungeon itself stops them. As you hear over the app on your phone, the dungeon wants someone to finish this, and the soldiers aren't going to get in the way. As you approach the end, your final task is to get through a band? A circus of clown orcs? Before you are orcs, dressed like clowns. This right here is just random. It's the visual that came to us at this point while we were daydreaming. And as the details weren't important, we just left it in. Skinny orcs with rainbow wigs and wide hula hoop trousers. A fat orc that has a long natural nose with a bulbous red ball at one end. It doesn't need braces to keep those trousers up, but it moves at an impossible speed and with incredible weight behind its attacks. You are forced to run forward. These may be orcs, but they're also clowns. One has a friggin' ladder, for God's sake. You run past it, and as it turns, it knocks down its friends with its ladder. Typical clown. I can't remember the word. This bit isn't scripted. I want to say conundrums, but that's not right. Typical clown escapades. One of those orcs gets stuck in the rungs, and they all begin to fight with one another. The skinny clown orc gets ahead of you, standing in front of a door you need to reach. but it jumps aside as you throw an axe at it and you dive past. The door closes. The app already told you what to do at the start. Put the statue you've been carrying on the pedestal and turn the key anti-clockwise. Congratulations, you've reached level 1. On your phone is a new app. It has your username, level, an experience bar and stats. There's a menu for skills and magic. Swipe left for your inventory, including equipped items, money, a unique currency, probably not gold because that's boring, but something that can't be used in the outside world, and rewards. Swipe right for a shop that can only be used when you are in front of a statue with the key inserted. Be sure to keep it safe. Stolen items cannot be sold without a penalty, and items bought in the statue cannot be sold externally. You can also friend others with the app, where you can monitor their condition live while they're in a dungeon, and maybe even get bonuses based on what they do. I had this idea for when someone reaches level 10 first, everybody else in the friend group gets a single item that temporarily boosts experience gain. The dungeon provides you with an exit, but what happens if you leave? Has everybody else escaped? Are they safe? Their app reluctantly tells you that once you leave, all portals will be closed and anyone left inside will be trapped. Damn it, you have to go back in. And so you do. You head back in, finding some of the others and getting them out. But there are still some soldiers inside. So, ignoring protests, you delve back into the dungeon, finding the rest and jumping outside with them. The portal closes. Thank God you're out. What the fuck was that? What does it... Wait. There's not enough people out here. What happened? Some of the soldiers, not happy to leave a civilian alone in a dangerous place, followed you back in that last time, and you didn't know, so you let the dungeon close itself off. Oh, God. And that would be the real beginning. The story would follow the events surrounding this and the appearance of more dungeons and the appearance of those with the power to challenge them. In fact, these people would be awakening much the same as in solo leveling. But while they would technically have the same powers as those who have the keys and statues, they wouldn't have the app to guide them, to accept rewards or to choose where to put attribute points. And that would make all the difference. There would be a time skip early on, letting the world adapt, but only after the main character has done a dungeon or two, letting us learn about the mechanics and to see their sheer desperation to return to that first dungeon and save those they left behind. The time skip would be about a year, maybe a little less, and we'd see how the main character has grown as they have been challenging dungeons alone and with parties. They'd try to keep a low profile so that fame or publicity wouldn't get in their way. Eventually, they would find that dungeon and would save the survivors. So by that point, there must be a subplot that can take over from the main plot. I like the app because pop-up windows feels off. Too virtual world, too video gamey to be immersive. But with a mobile app, that's perfectly realistic and down to earth. I was also playing with another idea that could work in either story as an added layer. Pre-existing superpowers. This idea is largely unrefined as I haven't put that much thought into any of these. Like, both ideas together come down to about 2 days of daydreaming while I went about my days. Literally nothing is written down except in the script. But I was interested in this idea of basically a 3-way power balance. Superpowers which would have been around for at least 2 generations. There'd be those with the basic, let's use solo leveling terminology, hunters. And finally, those with the keys who have access to the system. Very occasionally, there might be someone with pre-existing powers who became a hunter. And let's use an example here. A D-rank hunter with superpowers would be considered a pseudo C or B rank hunter, depending on their power. Even less common, maybe not even in existence, depending on what I want to do with the story, would be someone with powers and a key with access to the system. But let's say one of these pseudo B ranks found an ability or class that really matched up well with their power, but they died. And let's say they left behind an item that could bestow an ability based on that combination of powers.
And, the ruler's handstone?
Would that be a convenient coincidence? Or would it be the entire reason why this is all happening in the first place? Or even a better storyline where the main character is one of these hunters and needs to face down those who would hunt them. For example, if it became known that someone with well, let's call him a pseudo hunter for ease. Let's say it became known that killing these pseudo hunters could bestow an incredibly powerful ability. They would be targeted. And should the main character be one of these pseudo hunters, then they would need to protect themselves. Let's finish off with an example. That is the only example that I came up with. A teleportation superpower mixed with a sort of magical summon sword class. Warping about a dungeon while manifesting a halo of enormous glowing swords. I'm basically thinking of Devil May Cry when I do this. So, you know what I mean by summon swords. Then they die, and leave behind a sort of HM for the Devil May Cry style warping summon sword skill, where they can warp to or pull in anything pierced by the sword. If you've played the DMC Reboot DLC with Virgil, you'll know what I'm talking about. And I'm going to have to play all these games just for footage, aren't I? Fuck. There's a degree of entropy when this fusion happens, which I think is cool, because you'll never actually know what ability you're getting at the cost of the other person's life, but is still full of potential for storylines. And lastly, this teleportation TM. How do I use it? Do I swallow it? This second idea is similar, but different in some small ways. Here, the dungeons are more aggressive, manifesting randomly as black domes, appearing over small areas and trapping random groups of people in deceptively large dungeons. These dungeons are often what I'm calling two-stage dungeons. This is not the same as a double dungeon, it's solo leveling, so don't confuse the two. Although, whether or not we were subconsciously inspired by the concept of a double dungeon we don't know. People will always wake up in the first area, which is basically a cave system with dead ends and so on. Travelling through these caves will inevitably lead into an area that is more open, more ornate and likely man-made. Like a stone cathedral with a maze-like layout, or a tower made up entirely out of grand woven tree trunks that appear to go up without end. These will often be the habitat of different creatures, such as the feather goblins mentioned before. Skeletons. One day we need to discuss our ideas for taking entry-level monsters and making them legitimate threats, like skeletons and slimes. We probably need to play more RPGs to get a better idea of options. But honestly, we haven't played much in years, which is largely why we started the channel, because it motivates us to play more and do more, instead of just being depressed and miserable watching YouTube. Or dryad-like creatures. Plus, once you cross that perimeter from one space into the next, the type of monsters will likely be different. Of course, there's no reason why we can't see these beasts again in different dungeons. I played with the idea of one dungeon actually being outside, and nearby is a camp of the feather goblins that I originally only had in the first dungeon. This allowed for us to see them differently, as they had just rampaged through a town of the local, not quite humans, but not inhumans, not monsters, and were barbecuing some of their victims at their camp. The key to power Did we just come up with the name for our previous story? In this story, it's for the characters to... and I'm still not sure of the best wording for this. But basically, their desire to live, the reasons for which are unique to them and help inform them as characters, snaps them into a sort of madness when overwhelmed within these dungeons. And that snapping would awaken their power. The main character I had in mind, maybe not the one I'll stick with, would be someone whose life was fine, but full of little irritations that built up and built up, weighing her down to the point of suicidal ideation. But something about dying to these weird fucking feathered goblin freaks was absolutely unacceptable, causing her to snap. It's not very well thought out, but I wasn't trying to. The next person we will see snap was planned to be a teacher of some very young children. I'm not quite sure of the ages of school systems in other countries, but I was thinking preschool, like not yet in proper education, but very early on. We come across him and his students after they've already lost one teacher, and he snaps in a moment of tension because he just cannot bear to let these children die. Plus, that dead teacher was his girlfriend, and may not actually be dead depending on what I want to do with it, but he thinks she is, so yada yada yada. In the place of a nap, there would be a small crystalline clone of the character, with its own personality, ability to change hair and clothes and such, just zipping around the area. There would be no shop, but these little clones, these dead ringers, would be able to provide updates on skills, experience gain, because junction magic to stats, Final Fantasy VIII style, and would bring out weapons and items when requested. This is something I've learned in my own writing, but characters on their own can get kind of boring, especially as you can't really explore concepts and such without heavy narration. So providing another person, even if they aren't human, gives opportunities to use dialogue to keep things interesting and to reveal exposition. Idea 3. Fanfiction. We don't know a whole lot about the lore, any of the lore, of solo leveling yet. In fact, that's largely part of the key mystery which keeps me coming back. So what if we had a low D or C rank hunter, maybe magic based, who reawakens but with a martial ability while retaining their magic skills? Reawakening is rare enough that we don't know if this is possible, but we know from Hunter's Song that hunters can't choose their specialization, and that it may not match their skills. For example, he is a trained swordsman who was given magic. We also know that every hunter only has skills according to their specialization. So we could have some real power fantasy fun with this guy being a false ranker that nobody knows about. What exactly are to do with it is unclear. I haven't thought any further than this yet. Maybe his focus isn't on fighting or killing monsters, but on study, looking into pharmaceutical options in dungeons that others neglect in favor of the more immediately profitable mana crystals. He can sneak into gates, something people usually have to pay for, and either close them or just grab what he wants and retreat. You could have some fun things in here, like the red gates, where he plans on just getting what he wants and retreating, but gets locked inside and has to solo it. That could start a rumor about a mysterious hunter, possibly above A rank. The character doesn't have to be that strong, but rumors are like that. They tend to get over-exaggerated. And the guilds are beginning to get pissed off. Could base it in another country too, one who does things differently and maybe doesn't appear in the series to provide more freedom in the storytelling. Conclusion. I'm pretty proud of this video. Not especially of its quality, I've been having trouble with my mic, but instead because with this video, I have proven to myself that I can absolutely go into something new with low expectations, to not necessarily be wrong, but to still be able to find the good in it. I could easily have joined the ranks of people who think hating on the popular somehow raises their own status, or who just want the engagement ad revenue, or those who are two-dimensional thinkers who jump on the first bandwagon they see. But no, I formed an opinion, then attempted to challenge it, and ended up seeing both sides in a process, and I'm proud of myself for that. Still need to work on the microphone quality a bit though. And once again, please try commenting on this video. I don't care about liking or subscribing, I want a bit of a back and forth. I want to interact with people, to get their opinions and discuss. So I would really appreciate some, yes, engagement. And finally, the final of the final edit, just before I put everything together. I am so glad to have this done. So I enjoyed most of making this video. But whereas my big sister left me feeling stressed and drained, doing 4 Spider-Man videos in a row just left me tired. Doing solo leveling, I got bored like a few days ago. So I'm glad to have it over. And with that said, I've started reading the original manhwa, and it is 3 to 5 times better, maybe even a little bit more. But that kind of leaves me wanting to do a comparison video, saying, why did the anime make this change? I mean, it's a little disappointing that I don't think female investigator 6A is even in it. At least not where I am. And the anime moved the Jeju Island thing earlier to give it a mystery alongside Jinwoo's quest. So there are some things they were able to improve in hindsight. But they changed some other things. They did Jinwoo dirty. Let me tell you that. He's actually a really fun character in the original manhwa. So there were just little bits and pieces. I'm like, I don't know why they changed that, but it was a huge loss. Like in the Kasaka fight, where he's being all mopey and self-pitying, he's not actually being as bad as it seems in the anime. In the manhwa, it seems he's more bitter about the betrayal that happened in the double dungeon, rather than people taking advantage of the weak. So he needs to become stronger so he can't be betrayed again, etc, etc. It's stuff like that which is just... they changed it and made it worse. So I might end up doing a video on that. Bloopers? Anybody want a couple of bloopers? Problem 1. I was getting more. Jinwoo actually gets his heart handed to him. I really liked getting to see the survivors of the Dumbo dungeon. The trouble is, I'm trying to read this while standing to breathe better, but that also means I've got to keep my head down to look at my laptop screen to read the script. So I'm kind of messing up a bit.